Yeah, so I'd like to introduce you to our non-judgmental, non-self-righteous, friendly and very knowledgeable polar bear, Bjorn the bear. He's our brand mascot who I guess connects us to nature, focuses on climate change and helps guide us through everything. I'll structure this talk talking about the context for Pawprint, then showing you some of how the product looks. It's going to be launched in the coming weeks. We're hoping that you'll join our waitlist. It's at pawprint.eco. It's all free. And then I'll talk a bit about behavioral change and our model for engaging people, which are really important. And I guess that is the crux of what Pawprint is. It's a behavioral change platform to allow us all to lead more eco lives based on scientifically valid information. And that involves a massive experiment of how you can prompt people, but also how you can motivate people and make it easy for people to make changes. So a wee bit of context. So as Sophie mentioned, this is my second business. I set up the translation business Lingo24 almost 20 years ago. And I guess through that process, had some great experiences and some less good experiences, but always felt that I wanted to work on something really genuinely impactful. And that running a translation business that was 5 or 10% better than the next person's wasn't really, doing it for me enough. And when I moved into a non-exec role there, I was thinking about what to do next. And my wife knew before I did that it would definitely be setting up another business. And it was a response from, it was prompted partly by conversations with my dad about the climate crisis that made me think I've got to work on what is, the world's biggest medium to long-term problem. We need to get more very able people involved in this. And one of the mistakes I made with Lingo was, I think, maybe this is the sort of Aberdonian background when it comes to finances, recruiting at probably too junior a level, the top team. So just for context, I guess I want to share a bit of information about the team we've got here. It's a really high level team. We've got 2 people who are ex-unicorns, and I'd like to call out Tom Sermon, our who set up the Global Corporate Challenge, which is a behavioral change platform in health and well-being. So he has a lot of insight. In fact, he sort of drips insight as to how you can build a platform and sell it into businesses to achieve something that isn't core to that business, but is important to it for different reasons. Right, I'll crack straight into the product, because I think that's what people want to get a feel for, and then the model. And I'm hoping I can even come in under 15 minutes, and then we can open up to lots of questions. I didn't mention the mission. The mission of what we're trying to do here is to empower people to fight climate change. I think there's a lot of misinformation and a lot of sort of inappropriately prioritized information that we're all fed because of different interests, whether that's people hammering on about plastics or recycling or whatever it is. There's not one single trusted source, and we feel that we want to empower people to make their own choices in this quest to fight climate change. Right, so how does the product work? So the product that you'll all be able to get your paws on, if you'll excuse the pun, in the next couple of weeks, well, a few weeks I should say, has 3 broad components to it. So the first one is a very lightweight, easy to use carbon footprint calculator. I guess the differences from other, the carbon footprint calculators you can find online is the ease of use and the fact that it's comprehensive across a person's life, which not all are. So if I take you through these screens, you can see on the middle one how many flights do you take. It's very easy for you to indicate, broadly speaking, where you fit, and then we use all of that information that's transmitted to us in the course of 15 odd questions, depending on how you answer them, to give you what your paw print is. And you can see here and on the sort of central paw what that number is in carbon dioxide equivalent. So that's not just carbon dioxide, but also other greenhouse gases such as methane. And it's expressed also in miles traveled in a car, which is perhaps something that, the vast majority, well, it's definitely something that the population can relate to more this concept of CO2e, which is not very well known. You've then got your toe print. So how does that break down across your home life, diet, travel, and then other? So the products that we all buy, whether that's technology or clothes, or in some cases toys. So that's the sort of core of the onboarding process. Everybody, to really get value out of our product, needs to understand what their number is, and we want this icon or a variant of it to become a crucial thing that people talk about, want to understand. We have one investor who reckons that her teenage daughter, wouldn't date someone unless she was confident that that person had a low Pawprint. That's the sort of way we want this to invade into people's lives. We then move on to challenges. So once we know what your Pawprint is, we want to help you do what's right for you, and in a way that you feel comfortable to get that number down. The middle screen here shows how you can potentially pair carbon footprint reduction with other lifestyle goals you have, whether that's saving money or improving your health, etc., etc. And this is very flexible. So we'll be building out lots of different types of challenge categories. We've had conversations with a major sports star about doing his own grouping of different challenges, so as another way of engaging people. That's something that our user research highlighted as being really important. On the left-hand side, you can see what the sort of classic login page is going to look like. You've got Bjorn looking out on you, and then you've got the two numbers at the top. Your Pawprint is the 13.43 here, and then you've got your paw points. And we'll come on to this a bit later, but paw points are essentially a currency we'll be using to gamify the experience and to incentivize people with real world benefits. We need to connect it to what people see, feel, experience in the real world if it's going to really motivate our users and our community. I think I maybe didn't mention the sort of level of ambition we've got for this business. It has to be big. It won't work in terms of, because this is all about millions, if not billions, of people taking small steps and starting to understand what really makes a difference. So our business, we're all comfortable with the situation that it has to be big. It has to get to the hundreds of thousands, if not millions of users, or it won't work in terms of both impact and revenue. So we need to find ways, we need to use this platform to find ways to connect with people from very different walks of life and to motivate them. So just going through that interface, you can see some recommended challenges. You can see, so that's the first thing. We want people to immediately be thinking, right, what's the next action? You've then got the current challenges people are taking on, so they can go in and report on progress or check how much they've got to go or whatever, or remind themselves of the relative impact. And then the bottom bits are around, the history of your Pawprint and getting friends involved, which is pretty rudimentary functionality initially, but the social side of what we do is going to be huge to our success, as we'll see in the engagement flywheel. And then on the right hand side, you can see a sort of rough idea of how we're going to be expressing one challenge. Again, it needs to be expressed in terms that people understand. Like the whole carbon per year thing is something that is not intuitive to enough people for us to just do that. Right, and then we've got the reward side. So at this stage, you can see in the middle screenshot, we've got the way that the paw points will be used. So people will, in the way that you can in certain supermarkets, be able to vote for which local green organization, I guess, you want to support, whether that's in Leeds, someone like Zero Waste Leeds, who are helping people to reduce garden and food waste, or whether that's tree planting organizations or community space organizations or whatever. We want to be able to put money to the same cause of trying to make our environment as strong and as an enjoyable place as possible for people for many years to come. And on the right hand side, you can see the badges. So we'll be gamifying and having a lot of fun with different ways of rewarding people for different achievements within the app. It's worth saying on the reward side that the currency that we have there is very much just the start, and we're going to be using that. We've already had conversations with some big brands around how that can incentivize certain behavior, promote certain low carbon product, services and activities that they have, etc., etc. So there'll be a lot of experimentation and innovation around around the PowerPoints. So on the this is our engagement flywheel. So this is how we think about getting from one single user, from me, to it being something that's used by hundreds of thousands, and if not millions of people. So at the top right hand side, and from 1 to 3, you can see the sorts of things that we're going to be releasing in the coming weeks. So the first one is calculate your Pawprint and then set a goal for its reduction. The second thing is start getting into the cycle of challenges, which you're usually going to be fed. They're often going to last about a week. So that's the sort of cadence that we want as a minimum for people to engage with Pawprint. We're then going to be producing compelling content. There's going to be loads of really interesting insights as to what people love, what people hate, how there's geographical difference between companies and all that sort of stuff. And so we'll be able to use that to engage people. And then we'll get into the sort of the social, this is stuff that's going to come later in the year, but the social sharing teams competition, where I guess there was a lot of insight from Tom's sermon about how much more likely people were to do the global corporate challenge in fitness if their team was depending on them. And that was a 100-day program. You'd get into teams of 5 to 8, and you would see who could race the furthest. So once we can have people in teams, but also working on challenges together, we feel that that's gonna help improve engagement and impact. 5 to 7 are where we start getting into the public domain more. So I've already mentioned we're speaking to a major sports star about engaging with us, about sharing not only his Pawprint, but also what things he was trying to do, what things he couldn't do, in a quite transparent way, to engage his following and bring new people into this. Because we're trying not just to get, there are a lot of people, I guess green activists who are already doing a huge amount of stuff. And our target market is really people who want to do stuff, but maybe aren't enabled to do that, and they want to be inspired to do that. So if we can engage celebs to do that, we'll be able to crack on. Conscious of time, so I'm gonna move on. There's a guy called BJ Fogg, who is an expert in behavioral change, and this is the essential model of that we're going to be using. It's not, there's a lot of intelligent stuff behind it, but it isn't rocket science. The higher motivation someone has, I guess I should explain it here. So we've got the behavior is basically a combination of motivation, ability, and prompts. So if you're not going to do something if your motivation is low and it's really hard to do, and if something is really easy to do and your motivation is high, you've probably done it already. So what we'll be using is this sort of model to plot around which challenges, does the data prove to us for people fitting certain demographics, are likely to succeed. And we'll be, I guess, very active experimenting with a lot of different things to see how we can get to that level of impact that we want. Right, I feel like that's probably enough from me, Sophie. I've sort of I'll wind up there, and maybe we can open it up to questions and go into more detail.
Yeah, sure. Thanks so much, Christian. We've already got lots of questions, so we'll try and fire through some. Thanks so much for sharing that. So one of the questions a couple of people have asked is, you had mentioned that the app, you want to incorporate that into your everyday life. You wanted to make it as easy as possible to use. How did you guys go about assessing that and measuring that and making sure that was the case?
Yeah. So we did a lot of work with Nile HQ in Stockbridge, and Sarah Ronald, who's the MD there, sits on our Bjorn board. So we initially, with people from very different demographics, looked at how much they care about the topic, what they were doing already, where the sources of information they would go if they wanted to do more about it. And over time, gradually presented people with more of what our concept was and refined it on that basis. And there were some really interesting things that came out of that research. I mean, one thing was that, you know, I'd couched this as being like Strava, and thought that competition was going to be really important. But one of the things that came back from the research was that people felt around this topic that it was much more about collaboration than competition. So it's still absolutely a social thing, but not, you know, I'm better than you type of thing. The other thing that was really interesting that came out of this was the importance of neighborhood level information. So people wanted very much to know, you know, they're doing something, you know, themselves individually in their homes. There's the big, scary long-term goal of saving the planet, but there's also this interest in what are the low carbon products, services and activities that I can use, get involved in within a mile of where I live. And that's going to be very interesting when we roll that out, to see the extent to which you can get the sort of community spirit that we're seeing in the current times fighting COVID engaged around the topic of climate change. I mean, I'm really excited about that, and we've got some councils and governments interested in that as well.
Great, thanks, Christian. There's another great question coming from Claire. I think it's specifically in around the part of the product you were talking about where people can do their own carbon footprint. And how do you make that easy for people to input that information when they might have to go away and do some research to find out, like, how many flights they took last year, for example?
So we need to make this very clear to folk. We'd like people just to rattle through it and answer to the best of their knowledge, and all the questions should be easy enough that you should be able to answer them, you know, accurately enough. I think the main thing that people, you know, to get a 100% accurate carbon footprint for an individual is literally impossible, because there are so many variables and so much complexity to it. What we want to give people is the relative order of magnitude and an understanding of how they compare to UK averages, how they compare to other people, and get them going on taking the small steps in the right, in the direction of a lower carbon footprint. I used a judgmental word there, I apologize.
Great, thanks. I'm going to give you 2 questions for the price of one from James McLean. So how do you plan to ensure long-term regular customer engagement? So how do you get people to stick with it? And if there's anything you could go into with your commercial model for Pawprint.
Yeah, and the two are related. The number of challenges that folk can do is going to be significant. And it starts to, I mean, I'm finding this myself as I evolve my behavior, that you start looking at things in a completely different way. I think as people get to, you know, the lowest Pawprint they can have, our hope is that they will engage with it more on a community basis. And, for example, help us to organize events, help us to organize more things going on in teams and in different parts of their lives, and help us to make sure that the data and insights we've got can have broader impact than just for them. That's our hope. There are some other things that we want to do. So, and this is where we get into the commercial model. So my belief is that the greatest opportunity for significant revenue is going to be from effectively a marketplace for low carbon products, services and activities. So if people are getting deals on things that are, you know, lower carbon, that is a reason that we think people are going to keep coming back and engaging as well. But we are open-minded to there being different ways that we're going to engage on an ongoing basis, and we'll experiment with them. Just a couple more things on the commercial model. So the short-term aim is that we build out a business proposition to this. We've had about 25 companies get in touch with us saying that they want ways of helping their people to understand what contributes to their Pawprint at work. So under normal circumstances, how you travel to work, how you travel for work, what dietary options are available, how that business indirectly sources things. And also get insight on them as an employer. Are they, you know, are they leading the charge, or could they be accused of greenwashing? And to gather insights on the sorts of things that they specifically might do to be lower carbon beyond the things I've mentioned already. So that's a service that's very similar to the one that Tom Sermon built out in the health and well-being space. And then the eco marketplace is one. And then there's potential, we think, we've seen companies, the likes of a free trade or a coconut, people like this, offering services or premium services and charging small amounts for that. So whether that's exclusive access to events in the normal world, or to information, or other privileges, that's the sort of thing that we might do. But for now, the sort of revenue focus is around what we can do for business, and we're going to start a sort of customer discovery program in the coming weeks to work out, you know, the right exact spec for that.
Awesome, thanks Christian. There was quite a few questions in the chat there about your commercial model and things, so great that you could spend some time covering that. One of the other probably less deep questions that I think people will be interested in is where did the name Pawprint come from? So was it mostly, the question is surrounding whether you had any negative kind of feelings or responses towards the footprint terminology that's usually related to carbon footprints, and where did that name come from?
That's a good question, interesting question. I think we were looking for something that was snappy, memorable. For me, what I like about the word Pawprint is that it sort of expresses kinship with nature. I think lots of the things that we're going to be doing to address climate change or encouraging people to do, will also be part of fending off other sort of threats. Like, you know, the possibility of pandemics. So there's something around the kinship with nature, and the fact that we are all interconnected in that, and our families are interconnected in that need to look after nature. And then there's something about, you know, the sort of the depth of a paw print, showing that what we all need to do is tread a little lighter. And then I think it's sort of, the image has resonated with people. People from early days remembered that, and then it gives us this opportunity to play with Bjorn the bear, which is really about creating the right spirit. Actually, I tell you what, Meg, one of the things that's really, really important in the way that we've done this is to try and not be judgmental, not be self-righteous, put people at ease. And so having the figure of Bjorn the bear, who can mimic our advisor Mike Berners-Lee's tone in terms of immediately saying to people, don't beat yourself up, you know, it's about small steps and it's about what's right for you, is actually really important. Because the moment that you make people feel bad when you talk to them about their carbon footprint, and the moment that you allow them to continue feeling bad, you sort of, well, you've lost an opportunity. And we've got to engage millions and millions of people, so we've got to be, you know, we've got to be likable, and he's much more likable than you know, the alternatives. So yeah.
Thanks very much.
Love Bjorn. Just on Bjorn, we have a question around the design of the logo in general, Bjorn the bear, and any other design decisions that you've made, or anything of interest on those design decisions would be great to hear, Christian.
So Bjorn came around. So one of the other dads at Stockbridge Primary, you know, I knew was a very gifted artist and creative, and I'd sort of told him about the concept, and he knocked up Bjorn very quickly. I think he was very conscious of something that was accessible. I mean, we have had some negative feedback on it, feeling a little bit, you know, is this just for kids type thing. But I feel like it's accessible to people from different backgrounds. A lot of the product design was done by our partners. So we worked with Niall to get the concept right, and then we worked with a dev agency in Kendal called Verse around the you know, some of the illustrations that you'll have seen, and the UX and all that sort of stuff. I think there's going to be an evolution in that. Be interesting to see how close it is in future to what we're starting off with.
Okay, awesome. There's a few more questions, Christian. I'm wondering, would you mind answering some of them offline? But I will try and squeeze one more in, if that's okay.
Yeah, I'm happy to hang around if if anyone else is, but yeah.
Perfect. So the last one for today, what level of transparency will you have around the models, calculations and data sources for working out the carbon footprint? And will these be open source or open to user feedback?
Yeah, I think that's really important. We're setting ourselves up as an ethical organization. We're going to, and trust is like the key asset that this business is going to have. So things like how we manage data, how we calculate footprints, the openness to feedback and explaining what we're doing are fundamental to us. I mean, we do have a bandwidth issue because we're a small startup. So we have to, hopefully users will understand that, but things like opening up a community forum whereby people can see things. And as you say, being transparent on the limitations of the calculations is right. We do, with all of the data that we're using is checked by Mike Berners-Lee's company, Small World Consulting. And we view that as a critically important relationship to help build that trust. But anytime we do anything that makes people think, oh, I'm not sure if I can trust these guys, we'd like, hope you guys will join the community. We'd like you to call us out on that, and we'll either explain why we're doing what we're doing, or we'll change it quickly. Yeah, we know that we're gonna mess stuff up. It's just like we are humans. But the main thing I think is that we do our best not to explain ourselves and then take swift action when needed.